Hi everyone, thanks for joining our session. SpinifexIT's webinar this afternoon aims to show you the current document generation challenges organizations experience and how having an effective solution can help your HR team save hundreds of hours a year. This session will be led by Stephen Gallo. He'll talk about how investing in and improving your employee document process can bring you success across your delivery targets. He will also introduce the Strato Cloud Platform with focus on Strato Documents and Strato Workflow and how these can benefit your organization. Some reminders: this is a visual webinar, so instead of just listening in, please switch to your GoToMeeting app to view the slides and demos. This webinar will run for 30 minutes or so if you have any questions, you may type them on the questions box and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. You may also send your inquiries to info@spinifexit.com. A recorded version of this webinar will be available for our SpinifexIT customers and partners through Zendesk, our support portal. Without further ado, let me call in Stephen.
Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about employee lifecycle documents, and we're going to talk about lifecycle documents in general, and we're also going to talk about how they can be applied in the SpinifexIT Strato Document Platform. My name is Stephen Gallo. I've been doing SAP just a little over 14 years now, and I'm currently the product architect for North America at SpinifexIT. I currently reside in Columbia, South Carolina. And what we're going to talk about today, obviously, for the topic, are employee lifecycle documents. We're going to talk about how businesses typically produce them, or why you might be producing them that way. We'll talk about the maturity model of document generation, where you might be and where you could go. We'll look at some cost savings timetables on how document generation can be an actual easy win for your organization. And then we'll take a look at our platform and we'll do a small demonstration of the SpinifexIT software. To start with, what are we talking about, right? We're talking about the lifecycle documents that occur at any enterprise level business, right? It all starts out with recruiting. Perhaps you send some offer letters or contracts to get people in the door. And then over the course of someone's employment, right, they need to self-generate documents for themselves, like a verification of employment. But then there's those other things that happen throughout the course of the year, perhaps a change in position, merit time, a change in pay, people go on leave, right? And then there's all those benefits and payment letters that people might need, total compensation statements, claim letters, who knows? And of course, when someone retires or leaves the company, there's usually an exit letter as part of this process. And when I look at this, I see all these different departments, right? We look at the talent management when it comes to recruiting. We look at HR in general when it comes to movements. We even look at the benefits and compensation departments in here, right? Like document generation is one of those things that actually does span your entire HR organization. And a lot of people, well, not a lot, some people have a document generation solution, but they're not always stellar. Or you're all the way back like doing Microsoft Word, right? And the problems with document generation, unless you have some stellar piece of software, is keeping it compliant, right? Are we using templates in the correct way, right? So people who are doing the Microsoft Word method, you really don't have any compliance, right? You have some Word documents thrown out there on a shared drive, and when somebody gets a ticket, they go in and edit it. They have all that manual effort that they have to do to put that thing together, and then it goes out to the world. And hopefully they got it right, because we're human, right? There's human error that's involved. So when it comes to an offer letter, right, that thing has to be pretty much perfect. And the reason you might be doing that in Microsoft Word or Adobe or something is because there's limited design options out there. Some of the software that's released for document generation, at least in the SAP space, it's very difficult to get a pretty nicely designed document out there. And then again, what you're also trying to do, when it comes to document generation, is you want to improve that user experience, right? Right now, people are getting emails, they're opening stuff up, they have to print out letters, sign them, scan them, send them back. It'd be nice if you could provide some sort of workflow out there to make all this an automated process in the document generation space. Because I like to explain things in different maturity levels. And this is when you're talking to your businesses, your business itself, how you kind of want to explain where you want to go, right? Right now, you may be at level 1, right? You have those Word templates out there. Again, someone gets an email or a ticket. And then someone goes out there and gets the template and tries to edit it the best that they can for the business process that's going on. There's usually not really a good audit trail out there because somebody's sending it through email or through a ticket, right? And honestly, the different departments I go to, that could be someone's full-time job. Like, what do you do? Well, I have to do documents. Or it's not their full-time job, but it's something that they have to do. And it's one of those things where you get that email in the morning and you're like, you have to generate this document or set of documents for these people. And you're like, ugh, like it just ruined your day. Right. So that's kind of where level 1 is. Then there's software out there that provides level 2, right? Let's generate the correct document, right? Let's not have to go out to the Microsoft Word template and share drive. Let's just click a button and have at least the right document generated. And then I can put that document where it needs to go, right? That at least removes the human error out of it. We're automating the document generation process where we're saying, hey, you know what? This is a movement letter. We need to include, the guy's current position, what his current pay is, and we're pulling that automatically from the system. If it's even, could be even more intelligent, right? We have one movement letter, but we have 8 different entities at our organization, right? We need to make sure that this movement letter has the right letterhead, the right signatures, et cetera, right? The software at level 2 can handle that for you. Then we really want to get to level 3, where it's the set it and forget it mentality, right? Documents are generated based on events that occur automatically in the system. They workflow to the correct people for visibility into that document. We'll take a look visually about how this would work later. But that's the idea if you get to level 3, right? Level 3, in my opinion, is I did an event or an action in SAP or SuccessFactors, and the document was already generated for this person, and it goes into the correct spot. Because there's really a significant time savings when you put in document generation, right? And we have to think about this. We'll look at it at 2 levels. We'll look at it from the employee side and even as part of a recruiting process, right? So let's say HR has to produce, let's just say something basic, like a confirmation of employment statement, right? If we're looking at the top leftmost box, that might take 1 to 2 days for complete turnaround. Why is that, right? So HR has somebody has to request it. HR has to get the ticket. That ticket's going to sit in a queue. HR will finally get around to it, produce that ticket or produce that document. Maybe there's an approval step in there, and then it has to go, then it'll go back to the employee, right? That can take on average 1 to 2 days. So from the time I request to get my document, when am I going to get it, right? What you could move that to is a self-service process, right? Especially in this day of SuccessFactors, where users have the ability to log into the system, right? They can see their own data, they make changes to it. They could log in, say, hey, give me my confirmation of employment statement. And since it's done programmatically, the right document is going to be produced. So instead of having that 1 to 2 day ticket process go on, it can be done in 5 minutes, right? Or really the time it takes an employee to open SuccessFactors, click the button, and press generate out there. But then we look at it as can even be more complex as part of the recruiting process, right? When it comes to a recruiting process, there's usually definitely approvals and workflow that takes place in there, right? So a recruiter would review the candidate and prepare the letter. That letter then gets sent to the candidate. The candidate then has to do some sort of signage or approval and comes back eventually to the system. But that whole preparation for, on the recruiting side, it can be complex. It's not just a simple rule of like, show me the employee's position and show me their pay, right? Offer letters have very specific verbiage in them based on the requisition. Does this guy get reload? Is he an executive? Is he going to get deferred comp, et cetera, out there? That can take time to produce that letter. And then of course you have the whole back and forth, especially if you're at like level 1, where you're just like sending the paper document to the employee. They have to print it, sign it, scan it, send it back, right? What you could do is, again, turn that thing into a completely automated process, right? The recruiter could go out there, put the candidate in the correct status in recruiting, send it, have it automatically generate the letter. Recruiter doesn't have to do that. Automatically go to the candidate. Candidate signs it and automatically comes back in the SuccessFactors, and then you move them into onboarding, right? So that's what we're trying to get to, right? Taking those little processes that take days because they're being delayed by human interaction and just that we're busy in general, and automating them, right? So you can imagine how often, you're just thinking right now, looking at this, how often you do these actions in your organization, and where an automated solution can save you that time, right? Because this is what we're talking about regular, right? You can take a recruiting process, and we're not going to read every one of these points here, right? There's a lot of steps to get that done. This is just an example, right? Between getting to the offer, picking the right offer template, getting the right clauses in there, previewing it. Maybe there's even a workflow like the hiring manager has to look at it, right? We can take all these steps and knock it down to almost nothing, where it's all done programmatically, where the recruiter literally would go in, put the candidate in the offer status. It will automatically trigger a workflow and go out to where it's supposed to go. So you can take that 30 minutes of time for the recruiter having to do that effort and turn it into less than a minute. And you might be sitting here looking at this organization going, we have one offer letter template. It's very basic. It says, do you want this job? Yes or no. That might not be for you. But if you do have a complex offer letter process, these are the types of things that can save you and your staff a ton of time and money along the way, right? Because I just look at it in terms of departments, right? We were talking before about all the different, departments out there. We're looking at that document chart, right? And I'm just literally listing here 6 documents, right? But when you think about the volume, let's say this is like a 10,000 person company, right? They do about 500 confirmations of employment letters, maybe 300 offer letters a year. Or sorry, 5,000 person company, 300 offer letters. They got a little growth there, 200 termination letters. Right, when it talks about the time to build these things, right, because every time you need to build a confirmation of employment statement, let's say it takes HR or the service center 5 minutes to build that, right? We looked at duration earlier, it might take 1 or 2 days for it to come back, but let's say that the effort is 5 minutes to build that, right? And they do 500 a year. The time with document generation, you're pushing a button, right? Or if the self-service person it's doing it self-service and the time is costing you nothing, right? So you can see how these little minutes of savings really add up over a period of time. And it's not just the generation of these things. Some of these processes you do have semi-automated. For example, the comp department, right? The comp department, it doesn't matter how many you do because you're doing a total rewards letter, which you have a vendor doing, right? And every year you have to go out there and update the vendor's specific requirements. So, right, there's a project that goes on to say, hey, we're making changes to the comp statement. Let's go get with the vendor, write functional specs, send them the data over, test it, do the interface feeds, blah, blah, blah. If you have an actual in-house document generation solution, you're cutting that rebuild time significantly, right? You don't have to back and forth with the vendor. You're not sending interface files. The document generation solution is connecting directly to your system. So what I'm saying is when you go out and analyze your business processes, there's 2 types of ways to analyze it. One, by volume and the time it takes your employees to do it. But then you also have to look at those processes that you're currently automating. You might say, we're already doing this programmatically. It doesn't matter. We're going to skip it. Don't skip it, right? Take a look at that business process because there's probably some significant savings and the vendor is actually probably charging you money to produce that statement out there. And if you look at this, I mean, over just looking at 6 letters, we're at a small organization, we're talking 23 days. You can imagine if you're a large organization out there and you have more than 6 letters, which I promise you do, you can find really some instant significant savings in document generation, right? And that's where Strato comes in, right? So now we're gonna move on and talk a little bit about Strato. Strato is SpinifexIT's fully cloud-based HR and payroll solution to generate lifecycle documents. And what we're gonna see, it's also communications out there across the SuccessFactors and SAP suite. So whether you're on Employee Central, the different talent modules, recruiting, or you still just have an SAP ECC system out there with your payroll information in it or HR information, we can pull that stuff in as well. But Strato is becoming way more than just a document generation solution. We're going to focus on that today. But what we're also working on is full-on reporting, which will take place sometime in 2021, which will help you gather information, transactional information across the SuccessFactors modules. You're probably sitting there going, well, what about workforce analytics? SAP Analytics Cloud. And SAP Analytics Cloud is fantastic. I actually really like the thing for rolling up information, getting metrics. It's awesome. But when you want to know, what tax authority was this person hired under by this recruiter that got this specific benefit, that type of detail is not going to be there, right? If you still need those transactional bits of information, we're going to provide a solution that does that. What you will see though in Strato, for those of you who've seen it before, it's not just document generation. Now that we have a workflow engine that we'll talk to you about, there's also email distribution now as well. So if you need to send emails out en masse to your organization for specific events, that's going to take place. We're also building a full-on digital signature solution. So for those of you who do not have an Adobe Sign or DocuSign account, you can start to use ours. That's coming. And in addition, what we're going to focus on today, at least the new portion of Strato, is the Strato Workflow, because we believe that this is where significant cost savings can occur in document generation. Right, but as we all know, Strato it's fully integrated with SuccessFactors, right? So it's fully single signed-on. We respect the security within the system out there, and it is very flexible. What I talked about before, limited design options, is we built Strato to be designed for your specific brand, right? Your organization has a very specific color that needs to be in logos. They have a very specific design. We always like to tell people, if you can build it in Adobe InDesign, you can build it in Strato. as well, right? We built a pretty powerful editor that allows you to make things look correct for your brand. And you want that, right? The first interaction an employee or potential employee may have with you is an offer letter or an interview process, right? You want to make sure those documents look just as good as the next guy that this person's interviewing with, right? And again, it's no coding. Our platform is designed for end users. So if you can go out and build a mail merge in Microsoft Word, you can pretty much use Strato, right? So your end users who have to implement it, it's not like it requires a full IT project of resources to get this done. Any senior analyst can produce the documents, build them, and anybody can run them. We have a nice, easy to use interface we'll see today where managers can go in and generate documents, recruiters can go in and do it, or the thing is just automated, no one has to worry about it, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about one of the new features of Strato, which is the automatic trigger of documents via intelligence services. So when we get to the demonstration, I'm going to show you the basic stuff where we're just like the manager example. Well, I'm a manager, I need to generate some documents. So we'll look at it still at that maturity level 2. Then we'll take a look at maturity level 3, because right now Strato has the ability to read the events and SuccessFactors that get fired off and then kick off a workflow of approval. And that workflow can be going to anybody who's currently listed in the organization out there. And it's really neat, right? So when I think about workflow, we think of SuccessFactors as, the approval, right? An event occurs and then a workflow kicks off and someone's approving it, but we're taking it a step further, right? Also, before I get into that, you might ask what an intelligence service is. Intelligence services are events that happen in SuccessFactors. And it's not every event, right? There's certain things that you can do in SuccessFactors that don't fire off anything, but they have a specific set of events and they're adding more every time. When this event happens, one of the abilities that the event has the ability to do is to call a third-party service, such as Strato, to kick off a workflow. So someone transfers a job, someone gets moved into the offer status of created in recruiting. This fires an event, and we can connect that event into Strato to generate your document of choice. Because this is what it really looks like when you're thinking about workflow, right? The event has to occur in SuccessFactors. So let's say this event has already occurred, right? An employee's position is changed within SuccessFactors. What that's going to trigger, not shown on this screen, is that's going to trigger a notification for workflow in SuccessFactors. The manager or whoever's on that approval will get the information listed to them, and they'll press approve, and then the event is now in SuccessFactors. Once that event has been complete, then Strato can kick in. Because if you, let's say that position change, you're in some sort of company or organization where I know places out there where if the position is moving countries, that employee must be notified. There has to be approval in some cases that they're aware of it and life is good. So we're the next step in that process, right? We're the process that says, okay, now that this has occurred, we have to produce a letter. So that letter, again, would go to the manager. They can review it to make sure that it was correct, right? They've already reviewed the change, and that's correct, but now they're making sure the letter has been produced correctly. And then now that letter can go to the employee for maybe an approval or maybe just for notification purposes. Not all letters of change require an approval. They just need to be known that they've been sent to the recipient. And of course, the same thing with the offer letter, but here we're taking it a step further as well, right? At some point in time, an offer approval is going to get triggered in SuccessFactors, right? That process is going to take place. Who knows, has to approve it, but then that flag is going to be flipped to approved. That's when Strato kicks in. That's when Strato says, okay, the event is fired off. Let me go out and read where this candidate is, what their requisition is, and build the correct document template and send it off to the workflow process. Maybe it's a recruiter, maybe it's a hiring manager, and then finally to the candidate, or maybe it is just a candidate out there. We can handle that whole process end to end. Because what we've done is we built a workflow engine, right? We built a workflow engine that allows you to automatically trigger a document based on intelligence services out there. And what it does is eventually the document gets triggered, and then through whatever field you want in SuccessFactors, we can determine what letter gets generated. So maybe for a certain entity, maybe the whole reload package, maybe they have stock options. We can determine which template gets generated and which content within that template gets generated as well. Eventually, this will go through some sort of approval rejection process. Who knows who it's going to, but we're very flexible about who we can send it to. And eventually that offer letter will be signed or rejected. But either way, it will be notified and that letter will be put back into SuccessFactors. That's kind of neat. So with that, let's kind of take a look at this would look like. I'll show you kind of what it looks, a couple examples in our systems, and then hopefully you can visualize how that might apply into your organization. All right, everyone. Here's what I want to show you. I'm in my SuccessFactors system. I want to start off with an employee lifecycle document. And I like this example because it's something every company does, and there's a drastic time savings in it. For example, I'm logged in as this manager, Sydney here. And what I want to do is, let's say it's merit time of the year. One of those business processes that all organizations go through is merit. And usually what happens is a manager grabs his staff, brings them into the office one at a time, says, thank you very much. Here's your letter with your merit increase on it. And thank you for your service. And usually what a manager has to do is he has to go out and fill out the templates, right? He gets his compensation, letter or spreadsheet from the comp department, and it says the raises, and he's got to type all this manual stuff in to some sort of Word document. But because all this data is stored in SuccessFactors, we can kind of do it right from here. Because as we know, with Strato, we can run documents for yourself, but we can also run documents for your team. So let's go in here and see what Shane's team looks like, and or what Sydney's team looks like, and run a letter for one of his staff members. So what Strato's doing right now is it's talking to SuccessFactors, figure out who's on Sydney's team, and eventually it's going to pull up the document options that we have the ability to run as a manager. Any document that you build in Strato can be configured in here. You can see we have a few. And one of these is this notice of pay change, right? So let's go in here and click on notice of pay change. What Strato's doing now is going to load our selection screen. And what we're going to see is a list of employees that are direct or indirect reports for Sydney. And what we see here is we can run, if we were doing this in batch, we could actually run the document for everyone on his team and then download and print them, bring everyone in the office. There are options, of course, that if you didn't want to bring anyone in the office, if you're virtual these days, you can email it to said staff member after it's generated. Let's take a look at Shane, right? Shane, I believe, has had a merit increase. What we'll do is we'll generate the document. Perfect. Our document's now done. Let's go view it. You could have downloaded it directly from there, but we probably want to look at it first. So you can see that it's automated and that it's gone out. It's read the SuccessFactors data about Shane. Dear Shane, first name, last name, right? Dear Shane Creedon. You had a 4% increase. This was actually computed by Strato because what you have out there in SuccessFactors when you do a merit change is the before value and the after value, right? And so now you're getting $72,000 per year. Thank you for your contribution and service. And what you could do right here is you could print this anywhere that you want. So you could print it, you could download it as a PDF and those sorts of things. If this were enabled, there'd be an email button here. This is just one of those employee lifecycle processes that I like to talk about because it's something that every organization does, and it's so simple in nature that you can find ROI with this process very quickly. What I'd like to show you now is a letter of offer in Strato, and we're going to talk about some of the smarts that go along with the process of creating a letter in Strato. I'm logging into somebody else now that has permissions to recruiting, so we're going to click on this. A letter of offer is the letter you give an applicant that's passed your interview process, any of your screenings, and you're going to give them a letter that says, here's your pay, here's your possible benefits, maybe you're getting relocation, maybe you're getting a signing bonus, right? And what we're going to do is run a single offer letter for two separate people, right? Because then we'll get to see how smart it is, because these people might be different, right? They're in different requisitions. This person's a QA tester, right? And then we're going to run Nitesh over here. And Nitesh is an operations manager. That's what the job requisition he's applying for. And we'll go next, and we'll generate these two letters. Perfect. Our documents are done. Let's take a look. All right, here's our two letters of offer. Let's take a look at some of the features here. So our first letter appears to be for Nitesh. Right, so on behalf of SpinifexIT, you'll be reporting to Maya Cooper, that operations US department you'll be working in. We can see here he's getting a base salary and he's also getting a bonus. And if we look, it seems like he's also getting relocation, which is nice, right? What you also see here is this section is actually editable. So sometimes when you're doing recruiting, you can't build logic into everything. For example, you may have negotiated, you will also receive 5 weeks paid vacation. Right, not every bit of logic you can always put in an offer, or you can put into the system. There are exceptions to any rule, but notice the other sections are not editable, right? Only this one is. You can pick and choose what sections you want to change, like maybe salary. You definitely don't want to change. That should come from the offer, etc. You don't want to give the recruiter carte blanche to change that. Let's look how smart this is, right? This is Nitesh's letter, and we see he's got his bonus and his relocation. Same letter generated for a different requisition. No bonus, amount, right? No relocation. So the letter was smart enough based on what was included in the requisition or the job offer detail out there to determine what should be included in the letter. What we also see down here is this process has been set up to do digital signature, right? So if I kick this off, it's going to go do a digital signature first to Anna Singh for them to sign it, Joe Flores, who is the hiring manager, for them to sign it, and then finally to the candidate. So we actually have 2 steps of approval in here before it actually gets to the candidate to sign. We could push that away right now if we wanted to. So that's how smart a letter can be, given that it's can have the specific content that you need based on the requisition or the offer or the application, anything that goes into it out there. And if we wanted to, we could send this off through a digital signature workflow. What I kind of want to do now, though, is kind of step into recruiting for a minute. Let's go into the recruiting module and let's talk about doing this in an automated way. So in other words, when something occurs on the requisition or the job offer or the candidate, it can fire off an event that will actually start a workflow process for this. What Strato has the capability to utilize is intelligent services. Intelligent services and SuccessFactors are very specific events that occur, but SuccessFactors tracks them. And when they actually get fired off, we can catch that in Strato and trigger a workflow using our workflow engine, kind of like what we showed in the slide deck. Because here's what I have is Nitesh has been put here into the offer status. But one of the events that gets fired off in the intelligent services is a change of candidate status right here. So when we change the fact that his offer has been approved, and then we save it, this is actually going to trigger intelligent services on the back end that's going to talk to Strato. Strato is going to kick in its workflow engine and then start a workflow process. I believe the workflow process for this is set up to go to the recruiter, the hiring manager, and then eventually to the candidate. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so I've migrated over to my Strato demo recruiter email. As what I can see here is I've gotten a notification as a recruiter that there's something I need to approve, right? So please find the enclosed letter of offer for Nitesh, who applied for the position of operations manager in our best run HQ company. And here's a link. So as opposed to a digital signature, this is just a simple approval process, right? So what I have here are 2 buttons where I can reject or approve this letter. It's the same letter that we saw before where we have our bonus and our relocation. So as the recruiter, I'm going to press approve. And this workflow has now been approved. There's some other steps in here, such as going to the hiring manager and the candidate. So let's take care of that as well. All right, we can see now that we're over here as our hiring manager, and we can see we've gotten the next set of workflows for Nitesh. And it's the same type of email, please approve. So we're going here. We're now the hiring manager. Okay. Same letter, we do approve or reject. By the way, at this point, if we had rejected this, it's going to change the status to reject it on the candidate requisition out there. But of course, we want to get through this whole process, so we are going to approve it. You can see now we're here at the candidate, right? And we can see that their email is different. We are happy to extend you the offer, the job offer position of operations manager. You can click through the link here. Please use your first name as the password so we can password protect these things, right? The prior ones, when we clicked the offers, we were already logged into SuccessFactors as those people. So it did a single sign-on into the system, saw that we were who we were, and allowed us to approve it. Here, this guy doesn't have a SuccessFactors account yet, right? He's not an employee. So to view it, we're going to use the first name to open the offer. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so Strato is asking, what's my first name? Nitesh. Validate. Nitesh, capitalized. All right, now that it's loading, it looks like it opened in my other browser. We now have our final approval for the candidate, and we can simply say accept. And it will go back and do what it's supposed to do. I believe in this case, the letter gets stored back in SuccessFactors. So that's how you can use our workflow engine to improve your offer letter process. Now let's take a look back under the hood and see how these documents actually work. What I'm going to do is open up my instance of Strato from my SuccessFactors page. what we did is we generated a smart document. How did we know it was smart? Well, these things are pretty easy to build. We'll go take a look at that letter of offer that we generated earlier. I'm going to go into my library over here. And while that's loading, it's going to break this thing out into different groups, these different folders here. I want to go to my recruiting documents. And one of these in here is going to be my letter of offer. Let's edit this document. I pretty much tell people if you can create something in Microsoft Word, you can create it here. Our editor is pretty strong. And what it's going to do is it works like this, right? So for example, we have fields in our letter, right? Dear first name, external title. These are really simple to do. It's not like the tokening process in SuccessFactors where you have to like define the token and then know which token to use in your actual template. What we can do here is simply pick where we want the field, go to our field selector, and we can see we have access to everything within recruiting, the job requisition, the candidate, the application, and of course the offer detail. So the saying dear first name, I want to also add the last name. So let's just search for that real fast. It's under the candidate folder under last name, which is great. And we're done. And we can see here that this letter has different attributes to it, right? For example, there's a relocation paragraph. There's a stock options paragraph. When we generated this letter, we didn't even see the stock options paragraph. Why is that? Because all these sections are smart. We can simply say here, only display the stock options when the stock option is greater than 0, right? Simple conditions out there. However, you can get very complex with these conditions if you need it to be that way, right? I do have customers who have conditions that are this complicated, if not more so. So I just wanted to take you for a little quick back behind the scenes, and that's kind of how we build our documents out here. I want to thank you guys today. I hope you all learned something, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you for that, Stephen. We hope that this webinar has been insightful to you and can help you determine the next steps to improve your document generation process and drive effectiveness across your organization. If you have follow-up questions, please send them over to info@spinifexit.com and we'll get back to you the soonest time we can. Have a great day!